I think I doubt Bertie plucked that out of the air. Knowing Bertie, I'd say Bertie had sounded a number of people out on that. I would say he's, this would concur, I think, with perhaps the thinking that you would see from the Taoiseach around a managed process, not a rushed process around the Shared Ireland unit, etc., etc. But I was watching to see what the reaction, because, that's 2028. If I've understood what Bertie said correctly, I'd have to go back and check his exact statement. But, we're talking 7 years' time, which is not a long time. Okay. Now, I think there's a number of things at play there. And I think there's also, in a sense, you have an elder statesman, both picking a time of 7 years, which is to, try to see through as much of the sort of the ripple effects of Brexit, allow this question to settle. So picking a time that's not decades away, but is not so imminent that it's going to create further instability. And it gives people time to have conversations to understand how they could make an informed choice. The question you asked, though, Padraig, is a very interesting one about, could a British Prime Minister, say Boris Johnson, allow a referendum in Northern Ireland and not allow one in Scotland? And I think the answer is yes, for the reasons we're talking about with regards to the Irish situation. But the flip side is, on the Scottish question, that Scotland is much more integral to the United Kingdom's identity than Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland could move, I think, from the 1998 agreement. You have an international treaty that basically sets that out and sets out a decision. You have nothing in relation to Scotland. It's an internal question for Scotland. It's not solely an internal question anymore for Northern Ireland. However, what we were saying earlier, and it's too early to tell, but it is, if you're looking at this and you're trying to test various hypotheses, I'm wondering whether in London at the moment there are some that are drawing the linkages between Northern Ireland and Scotland, and they are perhaps seeing the risk of a domino effect. Either the Northern Ireland question is intimately linked to the Scottish question or vice versa. And is that the reason that you are beginning to see the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg be more assertive about Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom? So I think your question is really interesting. And it's a linkage that previous British prime ministers would not have seen. They would have put clear blue water, because Scotland is not a divided society in the way that Northern Ireland is a divided society.
Let me give you one scenario, and it kind of, afterwards I remembered more of our conversation than I thought I would, okay? Time went on, I became refreshed. Is that you talk about conversations having to come from within Northern Ireland. That's where the conversation should be taking place. You now have a situation of like a 40-20-40. 40% hardcore nationalist, 40% hardcore unionist, and then you have this new centre of 20%, the neithers, neither orange nor green nor Catholic or Protestant. A lot of them alliance voters. It is said again and again that unionists must be brought into a conversation they don't really want to have because the outcome is preordained. But could the route to that conversation be that it's when a majority of that 20% in the assembly say it's time we discussed the future? And hardcore unionists could say, well, we're not going to engage in that, in which case they'd have the opportunity because this would also be a process of bringing people in, hearing from experts, doing all of the things you have been discussing, so that if it's a date is set, as you said, say for 7 years or whatever, this could go on for 3 or 4 years. Is that one route, that it's this centre and with this centre, they'll, at least from the people I've talked to, they'll willingly talk about the future. Unionists with so-called unionists with a small u, traditional Catholics.
Yeah. So Padraig, just two things I would say. So when you say neither orange nor green or alliance, I think that's one group at that 20. I think there's another bigger group that's perhaps emerging. It may not survive, but I think there's a youth dimension on it. And that is people who are comfortable being both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I wouldn't put myself in the youth bracket anymore, but I put myself a long time ago, not naturally initially, but into the both bracket. So I have no serious identity crisis if the sovereign power moves to Dublin or London. I would be sort of what I think I said to you before. I wouldn't want the decision to swap alienation from one community to the other. So I would want to be bringing as many people along as possible in whichever direction you're going. So I think the both angle, is there. And when, you talk to Monica about those sessions that she spoke to you about, we were having behind closed doors those types of conversations with very, very broad spectrum of opinion privately. And I would say, completely off the record, the conversations and the scenarios that I was asked to set out, just to sort of be devil's advocate, is to just, from a practical policy point of view, what's the spectrum of sort of constitutional choices for this space? Now, I think those conversations internally, you'll have diehards on either side. But you're talking, what roughly, if I were to be asked, what roughly would you need to carry a society so that it wouldn't be completely divisive? Okay. And I would be saying you're probably going from around 66% through to about 75% or 80%. That from a simple future cohesion of society, you would want to be in that ballpark, okay, of carrying the debate forward. And some of the people, so in one of your emails, you said you spoke to someone, you were speaking, I think, to one of the younger MPs from Sinn Féin.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference, the only difference I would say in terms of, where somebody has a fixed position is when you engage in the dialogue, are you engaging in advocacy or are you looking for accuracy? So I think some of some unionist voices that I speak to, that I hear from, say the following. They say, look, we're very happy to have the debate. We don't want to be rushed. Some people even go as far as to say, we know this is coming, but we just don't want it to be on Sinn Féin's terms. So it's the messenger rather than the message.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I think Micheál Martin is getting this right. I think he's a voice of constitutional nationalism. Now, even within Sinn Féin, and even within, and I said to you before, one of the most impressive thinkers that I've heard privately is coming out of the former military wing. And